Thank you very much for staying this the marketplace. Now, Corporate Relations Director for Guinness Ghana Brewery Limited, Gabriel Opokwasare, is appealing to government to liaise with stakeholders of the manufacturing industry to enable them formulate policies to enhance the development of the sector. The call comes as government aspires to move the economy to an industry and production-based one. Speaking to Joy Business at the launch of the annual Don't Drink and Drive campaign, Gabriel Opokwasare noted such consultations will help address some outstanding challenges.
The Don't Drink and Drive campaign emanated from a commitment by global beer and spirit producers to reduce the effects of harmful drinking. For Guinness Ghana, embarking on this campaign is to educate consumers on safe drinking as well as shed light on the quality of their products. Speaking in an interview on the sidelines of the campaign, Corporate Relations Manager for Guinness Ghana, Gabriel Opokwasare, appealed to government to work closely with industry players to formulate policies that best suit development of local manufacturers.
Government should make sure that they have industry at the heart of policy making. Once industry is at the heart of it, we can talk about the issues on the ground and how to address and how to model these policies to drive industry growth. And one example of such policy is the Customs and Excise Act 903 of 2015, which has enabled us to source local raw material locally. Without that act, it wouldn't be feasible. I would say it wouldn't make business sense for us to source locally. So getting private buy-in into government policy at the initial stages is critical.
He also advocated for the creation of more infrastructural developments in the agri sector to enhance access to raw materials locally.
So we currently source 48% of our local raw materials from Ghana. We source sorghum, maize, cassava, all from Ghana. For us, we want to source more, right? And that means helping farmers to improve their use by giving them fertilizer, by letting them understand how to plant properly and also get higher use, right? For us, we've guaranteed supply and we can use the production of our drinks for Ghanaians. Currently, we are not at the best state yet. If you look at local grains comparatively to imports, the prices are quite high, and these are due to, I would say, the value chain challenges, transportation, the use, and all of that. I would say infrastructural challenges are fixed. So once you produce on the farm, you can get it easily to Accra, you can get it to our breweries. You have middlemen who actually have good business models, and they can provide financing to help the farmers. All of these things will culminate in getting the prices down and having good use. And with that, obviously, price will drop.
This year's Don't Drink and Drive campaign by Guinness Ghana Limited is the 5th edition since its inception.
Now, Ghana Home Loans, now GHL Bank, is promising to change the way construction and mortgage financing is done in the country as it formally begins operations today. George Wiafe has more.
GHL Bank's entry into the banking space would increase the number of commercial banks in the country to 34. Ghana Home Loans, now GHL Bank, is beginning its operations as a universal bank after 10 years as a mortgage finance company. So, after doing so well as a mortgage finance firm, why the rush to become a bank, looking at all the challenges in that space? That's the question I posed to the managing director of GHL Bank, Dominic Edu, in one of his first media interviews as a banking boss.
Saw some gaps in the model, the business model we'd adopted. In particular, we were not banking the self-employed, which became very difficult to determine their incomes for qualification for mortgage purposes. When we were given a check, we had to go and pay to another bank. Bank saw the client and could call the client and take a business away. But fundamentally, we found that we had the largest asset of an individual, and yet all the other transactions were being conducted with other banks apart from us. So what we felt was that it was time to actually provide a one-stop bank where if somebody take a mortgage from us, they have all the other financial services they would need in their life. And therefore we have a better picture and be able to serve them better.
It's interesting you talk about the fact that all these hurdles pushed you. Again, have you looked at the banking space very well for you to appreciate that? Do you know the deep blue sea that you're diving into? You look at capital requirements, you look at regulatory requirements, you look at liquidity issues, and you still want to be a commercial bank.
Yes, it took us more than 2 years to make that decision and a lot of research into the industry before we did that. But we're coming in with a model that is very clear.
That was a Business Desk report. Meanwhile, board chairman of newly outlawed Ghana Home Loans Bank says the new universal bank will prioritize reducing the housing deficit in Ghana by at least 10% in the coming months. The huge deficit in Ghana, which stands at 1.7 million, is partly based on the high rate of mortgages in the country. By speaking to Joy Business at the launch of the bank, Albert Essien says the bank will be coming up with innovative packages to stimulate a savings culture towards securing homes in the country.
Industry, there is nothing more reassuring for clients and we the operators than to know that there is an active and straightforward regulator that keeps everyone on the straight and narrow path. I'm able to say with great confidence that backed by the great foundation laid by our mortgages, GHL Bank is a solid bank and we intend to build on its strength. We fully acknowledge the requirements from the Bank of Ghana to ensure that at the end of 2018, we would have a capital of 400 million cedis. And this will be met and deployed prudently. We shall ensure that GHL Bank will have a very strong and effective corporate and governance structure to enable us deliver on our vision of wealth creation through mortgages as our main anchor product. As an organization that has remained consistently committed to the mortgage industry, we are pleased to announce that our shareholders, founders, are equally confident in the future of GHL Bank. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are aggressively going to build on our current clientele base with our complete products and services for the various private individual segments and the corporate verticals. We at GHL Bank are committed to deliver cutting-edge solutions that will enable private individuals and businesses realize their full potential in creating wealth. There is a lot of opportunity in the property financing in our country, and these should be good times for those who would seize the chances being offered by GHL Bank.
This is live on the marketplace. Moving on, the Bank of Ghana has increased the amount of dollars it releases to commercial banks to support their operations. Now, this is what Joy Business has picked up from financial institutions that are active in the forex market space. But what has influenced this move by the Bank of Ghana, and is it sustainable? George Wiafe will be giving us more as he joins me right here as usual in the studio. George, you're looking very splendid.
Thank you so much, Yafe.
All right, so tell us, what has been happening?
A lot of things have happened in the currency space. If you could cast your mind back to November, we've seen serious blips in the market where they would go up or come down. And for many people, their concern has been the sustained depreciation that we witnessed last month, and was worrying because for businesses and for those who import and for those who bring in the raw goods and commodities to actually help the manufacturing, it was bad. You open a week and you plan the cities about 4 Ghana cities, maybe 32 pesos. The next 2 days goes up to, and that was so bad. And we also didn't see the regulator, because when you look at the market, it's basically a function of demand and supply. So if there's a shortfall of dollars, which all these businesses need, we're becoming more of an import economy. If they need more dollars to finance their imports and then they are not getting it, so the limited dollars in circulation, then people start betting on that. People start hiking the price. Okay, you need dollars. Okay, give me maybe 5 Ghana cedis to get $1. And that is what we've seen over the period for that appreciation or more of depreciation to happen over the period. And this is what we've seen. It was sustained, it was bad, it was hurting businesses, and we didn't see the Bank of Ghana coming in quickly to make available more dollars for those businesses and even the commercial banks. They need these dollars to provide cover for imports that these guys who are bringing in goods from the Chinese market to support their business and operations.
Now, George, even in the past, the Bank of Ghana has applied this approach, or has used this approach to actually shore up the value of the cedi. Now, why is it going to work this time around if it hadn't in the past?
Well, it's always been a short-term solution dealing with the situation. And as we tried to explain earlier on, there's been a mechanism right now where most of these dollars found themselves in the banking vaults, and even at the Bank of Ghana as well. So the Bank of Ghana has to release these dollars to commercial banks, so that if you are bringing in goods from China, or you're going to import goods from China, you can use these dollars as a cover to support those imports that you want to bring in from China. So there's been serious shortfall of supply onto the market, and all these things are always seen as an interim measure in terms of dealing with the situation. What we saw last month was that the Bank of Ghana wasn't really on the market. When you engage the commercial banks, they'll tell you that, George, we are not getting our supply. So if you have a bank B asking Bank of Ghana that we need about $50 million or even $20 million to support our businesses or our clients who are bringing goods from outside, you get about even just maybe $20,000. It tells you that it's a problem. So and that is impacting on the pricing of dollar-cedi ratio, the city not doing so. We are an import-led economy. We import a lot. So if you are not exporting more Ghana, more to get dollars to shore up your reserves, this will come. And
so what have the banks been saying about this?
Well, when you engage them recently, they're telling us that in terms of their requests that they put to the Bank of Ghana, they've seen some increase in terms of, so if for instance the bank was putting a request of about $10 million, they're getting about $5 or even $8 million. So they've seen some significant improvement in terms of the regulator upping its support for these banks that play in the forex market, or the forex market space actually.
Right. So how exactly do we find a lasting solution?
It's always a problem. And when you engage some people, they believe that it's about exporting more. And the more you export, the more you build up your dollar reserves. Or maybe just like what the late Dan Latte had said, it's about domesticating. If we don't consume what we eat, then you're going to spend all the money that we have in actually financing these imports. But let's hear let's watch Dr. Eric Osesibe. He's an economist who's been sharing some interesting thoughts on this issue.
And the long-term measure will always be to promoting export, diversify, and bring in more export. But in the short term, one, you need to either use interest rates, trying to increase your returns on domestic assets, so that instead of people speculating on the currency, they'll rather buy the assets, bonds and others. Now, the problem the central bank is having is, because the treasury bill rate is very low, people are not getting enough alternative high yield instruments, and so they are speculating on the dollar. So one of the ways the central bank can do to try to stem that, I will not say that the central bank should increase the monetary policy rate nor the interest rates, because that is also very detrimental to growth. But if you have enough buffer, if you have enough reserves, I think that you have the solution within the short term is well known to you, and so you just pump in a bit more, and then making sure that there's enough reserves in them, enough supply to cushion whatever excess demand that comes up. It's essentially.
Some say that for the first time, the reserve position of the Bank of Ghana is quite good.
It's good.
What is stopping them from the necessary interventions? I engaged the commercial banks, and what they are telling me that the Bank of Ghana is not on the market, and even they're doing $4 million, and that's peanuts for all these banks to have to finance their imports. Why do you think that the Bank of Ghana is being very skeptical or reserved in their approach, despite having all these reserves? Do you think they are building up for the rainy season next quarter or something?
I said this last week in an interview that I granted, that I think that the best way for the central bank to shore up the currency, to stop the currency from depreciation, will be just to be in the market, to sell more. Of course, the selling more is not sustainable, but looking at our economic cycle, it's very cyclical. Around this time, getting to the tail end of the year, and in the first quarter of the year, you often will see high demand pressures. You understand, the demand pressures will be high. And so if you understand the dynamics in the economy, and being so lucky, having enough reserves that has taken you beyond the threshold of 3 months of import cover, then you are at a very good position, to making sure that you do not allow the city to depreciate, because the implication, the ripple effect of the currency depreciation is enormous on the economy. Like I mentioned, the pass-through of the currency depreciation to inflation is high, and inflation now is everything. If prices begin to rise, it will throw everything out of gear. You know, all the projections that are being made will be thrown out of gear, because the central bank has to immediately intervene and adjust the monetary policy rate up. And that will then serve signal for all the other interest rates to also begin to rise. And so you don't want that to happen.
So that you heard the economist, Dr. Erica says, be sharing his thoughts about all these issues and the short to medium-term approach by the Bank of Ghana in trying to arrest the Ghana cedi.
Are they really going to make an impact, if not just being theoretical about this case?
There's always a short-term measure and a long-term measure in dealing with this, but everybody's saying that, listen, we've not gotten to the first quarter rush, because in January, February, businesses would be important to restock. Those outlets that actually sold everything during Christmas also will start trying to import as well. Okay. But if you look at the Bank of Ghana's reserves, almost $7 billion. So maybe the Bank of Ghana needs to be on the market more in terms of supplying dollars, and also look at how we can get some of these stuff locally. Right. If not, we are going to import everything from outside. There's also this argument about trying to regulate the amount of monies these multinationals will be sending out as dividend payment to their shareholders. Sure. Maybe it should be staggered. What has happened to quoting of prices of commodities in dollars? Don't forget that even some government agencies are charging dollars for certain services. So there is always a reason for people to hold on to dollar accounts when they don't need it, because if I'm going to pay the Ports and Harbors Authority in dollars, why would I want to hold cities to try and go and pay them? Some also said that, listen, build the Ghana cedi, let it be strong, and that will be the motivation. That will stop people from actually gathering a lot of Ghana cedis to go and invest in dollar assets.
All right, thank you very much, George,
thank you so much
for that incisive analysis on the cedi. And that was George Riafi. Moving on, the Environmental Protection Agency currently employs less than 350 personnel to serve the entire Ghanaian population of over 27 million people. This essentially means one EPA official will deal with about 77,000 people when it comes to environmental-related issues for every district in the country. This disturbing trend is negatively affecting the oil and gas sector as well, where the EPA relies mainly on the Jubilee partners for monitoring purposes. Udila Ntiamoa explores how monitoring is done in the Keta Basin of the Volta region.
Keta in the Volta region is part of the Voltairean Basin, where onshore oil exploration has begun by Swiss Africa Oil Company. At the beach of Keta, I have come to see who might be mostly affected by the Keta Basin exploration. It took virtually twice the time I would have taken, because the main road through the Keta township has been eroded 3 times by the boisterous waves. The Keta area actually has been hit several times, people relocated too many times, and this road is a typical example. This is actually the 3rd of the roads that has been constructed in this area that has been eaten by the sea. Well, so the expectations of the people in this community is that the oil find does not come to add another disaster to their livelihood. Several people through the Keta Defense Program were relocated, but many others are still around. Their lives really depends on the sea, which is also eating away roads, walls, houses, and in some cases, a whole town.
We are constantly hit by the sea waves. The destruction is massive. During the construction of the sea defense, some people got the opportunity to relocate, but others like us could not, because the houses meant for us went to others.
Salasi Mauto has heard of a probable oil exploration in the district. Employment opportunities are high on his list, but the environment for the survival of his family will not be compromised.
We have mixed feelings about the oil exploration. Our fear is that if there is a spill, fishing here will end.
At the Keta Sea Defense, the head of the oil and gas unit at the Environmental Protection Agency, Kojo Agbeno Ifunam, says the agency does not have the men. While the United Kingdom, for example, has over 3,000 workers for the same land size, Ghana has less than 400 at the EPA. In the whole of the Volta region of Ghana, where oil and gas exploration has begun, no one has been specially trained for the oil and gas sector. We're coming to do onshore.
Yes.
Are you ready?
No, in the sense that the kind of the manpower or that we need for this activity to take place to the satisfaction of the people and let me say the Ghanaians as a whole, we do not have that kind of the human capacity that we need currently.
Neither are they adequately prepared for any emergencies, as there is no budget allocation for that.
But your capacity is very low, and the sort of money that is voted for your department every year is woefully inadequate to really monitor and execute the kind of mandates that you have to execute onshore.
We are hoping for better days.
The agency, since the oil find, has depended on the partners to monitor the operations at the rig. So the question is how the Environmental Protection Agency can monitor effectively at this rate.
If it is the offshore, then we have some obligation on the companies that if we are going, they will have to assist in taking us there.
This came up strongly during the Itlos case between Ghana and Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast accused Ghana for not doing proper monitoring of the high seas and flouting environmental regulations.
They said the environmental legal system that we have is not strong enough, it's porous. And they made some, allegations about it. The second one is the system that we have in terms of the environmental management. It's not strong, it's not good. Then the third one, citing some alleged incidents that took place and EPA did not do anything. So those were the three main things that they raised against the EPA or the environmental side of the oil and gas.
12 key areas for investing the annual budget funding allocation since its inception has also ambiguously included the environment. But this has not really materialized at the EPA, where monitoring of the environment is supposed to be done. Ghana's first onshore license has been given, but the EPA is not ready for monitoring in terms of their staff strength and resources. A spill at Keta will mean double disaster. That's the act of God, that's the sea waves, and the act of man, that's oil spills. The Assembly is worried the presence of the EPA is conspicuously missing.
And that report was by Odilia in Tiamwa. Now, if you have a swimming pool at your home, then you should be very rich. That is the perception held by many people. But entrepreneur Israel Senanu wants to change that view. He's one of the most sought after constructors, pool constructors. And today, on the Joy Business, Vandaro Kwao will be getting some more insight into his business. Let's see what's expected to come.
This is just one of several pools that Israel has constructed. Tell me how you got into constructing swimming pools.
Yeah, I happened to work with a family friend about 15 years ago who was doing a swimming pool. But I worked briefly with him before he traveled to the US, and after that I got into it, though I have a passion for construction since childhood. So after that, it's a very small area, so I developed that interest in that area rather than general construction. So I just specialized myself into building pools.
So what goes into constructing a pool like this?
I would say it's a complete construction like a house because you do excavation to get your depth and what have you. Then you do your block work if you have to do. Then you do your form work to get the form and the shape of the pool. Do your concrete, your metal work, tiling, electrical work for your lights, for your motor, and so it's a whole construction from like a building.
How many Ghanaians are into this kind of a business?
Yeah, it's true. To be honest with you, I can say in the whole of Ghana, major swimming pool constructed companies or like myself will be about no more than 5 across the whole of Ghana. And they are very, very difficult to get, and not alone even the pricing. So people tend to shout, okay, why can't we try 2, 3 people, but they are not available.
So the perception that people who are in...
Get the full story tonight on Business Live. I am Emmanuel Abuaji. We have here. That's it for the marketplace. Good afternoon.